If you're hearing this, stay with me all the way to the very last line, because the letter he tucked under my pillow the night I tried to run away wasn't a demand or a warning, it was an invitation, and it cracked everything I thought I knew about the man they forced me to marry when I was 20 and he was 40, a widowed father with sawdust under his nails and a little girl who learned to flinch whenever someone said, "New mom." I'm telling this whole thing for the first time, and I promise the part where he surprised me will feel like someone finally remembered to breathe for you. Before we fall into that winter, do me one small favor because it keeps stories like this alive on this corner of the internet. Tap the like if you believe real love looks quieter than the movies make it, and subscribe so you don't miss the next confession. Your comments after the story, about families we never chose, about second chances, are the reason I can sit here without shaking. Okay. Here we go. I was 20 years old and exactly halfway through a photography program at the City College when my world shrank to a kitchen table, 3 unpaid hospital bills, and my father's voice thick with the kind of shame that makes grown men sound like children. He'd driven a delivery truck for 20 years, then the highway took a turn and gave him a fractured spine and a ventilator stay none of us could cover. The man who lent us the money wasn't a bank, it was Ethan Reyes, a contractor who'd framed our old bungalow's roof a decade before Dad's back gave out, and whose wife, Maribel, had died of ovarian cancer 2 years earlier, leaving him with a mortgage, a shop, and Lily, who was 5 and still slept with a soft-chewed corner of her mother's cardigan. Debt makes people invent bridges they would otherwise spit on. Dad didn't hand me a contract, he handed me a choice that wasn't one. Ethan would clear the medical debt and keep the house in our name, if I agreed to a legal marriage. "It's just paper, Lena," my mother whispered, and her eyes were already pleading with a future she couldn't picture any other way. "He's a good man. He promised he won't touch you, that you can keep school, that he only needs a mother figure for Lily." I wanted to scream that I wasn't a figure, that I was a girl who still set alarms to catch golden hour on the fire escape and who had imagined love as a shared flat with a boy who texted back. Instead I stared at the grain of the pine table my grandfather had built and thought about eviction notices. I said yes because 20 is old enough to sign and too young to know how heavy a yes can get. The wedding was a city hall hallway on a Tuesday. I wore a thrifted cream dress that smelled faintly of someone else's perfume because I couldn't afford dry cleaning. Lily stood beside Ethan in a navy jumper that swallowed her, clutching a picture book and a dented thermos of apple juice. Ethan looked nothing like the villains I'd rehearsed in my head. He wore a clean flannel, his temples were salted with gray, his hands were nicked and dry from wood glue. He didn't smile when they asked, "Do you take?" He said, "I understand the terms," and when it was my turn I heard my voice crack on my own name. The clerk stamped, Lily sneezed, and the 3 of us walked out into March rain. Ethan carried the thermos so Lily didn't drop it. He never took my hand. He drove us to a 2-bedroom house behind his workshop where the air smelled of cedar and paint. On the kitchen counter lay a single key tied with kitchen twine. "This opens the side door and the small studio above the garage," he said, and I waited for the clause, the condition that would make the room tilt. "The second bedroom is yours. Lock the door. Lily sleeps across the hall. I'm up at 5, there's yogurt, there's bread, there's a bus schedule taped to the fridge. Your program, keep going. I don't know how to hold you to anything but distance." I thought he was performing kindness for an audience of no one, so I did what any terrified 20-year-old would. I slept with my backpack against the door that first night, and in the dark I heard Lily whisper through the wall, "Daddy, does she sleep like Mom?" and Ethan answer, barely audible, "No, sweet pea, she sleeps like herself." School became a commute and an escape. Between lectures on exposure and aperture I came home to a house that never demanded my wife-ness. Ethan left notes more than he left conversations. "Milk low, Lily's recital Thursday if you're free, no pressure," left your negatives in the studio, didn't open. The studio, that stopped my breath. Above the garage, where I expected old tools, he'd cleared half the space and set up a second-hand desk, a light box he'd repaired, a single good lamp, and a corkboard. On it was a sticky note with Maribel's looping cursive. He must have saved it, reading only, for the one who sees. He didn't call it a gift, he said he needed fewer boxes. But I knew the difference between a storage shift and a place being made for you. Lily, though, was whole weather systems of grief. She watched me with the tilted suspicion children reserve for substitute teachers. The first Saturday she stood in my doorway and said, flat, "You're not my mom because my mom was pretty." I swallowed. "She was," I said. "Do you have pictures?" That night she slid a shoebox across the floor, photos of Maribel laughing in paint-splattered overalls, of Ethan younger without the furrow between his eyes. I asked, "Can I take pictures of you?" and she shrugged. The next day I dropped a disposable camera in her lap. "Photograph your week," I told her. She did, with crooked fingers, her cereal bowl, the curve of Ethan's head at the workbench, my shadow repairing the fence at dusk because I couldn't sit idle. When the prince came back she stared at the tiny one she'd taken of me holding her hair back from a fevered forehead and whispered, "You look nice when you don't try to be my mom." He surprised me first not with romance but with restraint. On a night my professor kept critique late, I missed the last bus and walked 10 blocks in the rain, arriving soggy and furious at my own dependence. Ethan opened the door and didn't ask why I was late the way my own father would have. He handed me a towel and the key and said, "Your room's dry." I left soup. He went back to sanding a chair leg. The steam of chicken broth rose and I realized I had never been in a house where a man my age or older didn't take my exhaustion as an invitation. He never crossed the hallway. He never called me wife unless the school needed emergency contacts and I'd written his number myself. Conflict slipped in quiet. My classmates assumed I'd dropped out to become a trophy, posting memes about sugar daddies. My mother asked when we'd consummate the marriage, to make it real. I felt the guilt of being fed and safe while the girl I'd been, who planned on subletting a loft, on laughing with friends after midnight, ached. And Ethan fought his own war. One Sunday he was on the porch fixing Lily's tricycle while I tried to edit a series on mothers and daughters. Lily, fresh from a neighbor's birthday, came running. "They said you're too young and Dad bought you like a couch." My gut nodded. Ethan set the wrench down, knelt in sawdust. "Lena didn't get bought, baby. She gave us a chance when we had no one," he said. "And sometimes when you love someone you make sure they can leave." Lily stared. "Do you love her?" He swallowed. "I love that she's here and not afraid. That's enough for me." Later he found me crying over proofs and handed me a sealed envelope. "University State sent it weeks ago," he said. "Open it." Inside was the scholarship letter I'd thought was a dream, full tuition for the documentary program I'd stopped daring to apply for. I'd applied at my professor's push, using Ethan's address because mine risked eviction. He'd hidden it because, he confessed, he feared this life would clip my wings. "You have to go," he said, voice low. "You're 20. You were forced into this room, don't let gratitude calcify into a cage." The admission required moving 3 counties away, dorming, impossible hours. The contract of our marriage said 5 years for legal security, he'd never said we had to live by it. "If you stay because of papers I'll resent myself," he told me, and my first thought was anger. After months of learning the rhythm of Lily's breathing at night, after finding a place at his workbench where I printed contact sheets, he wanted to be noble? But his surprise wasn't cruelty, it was that he believed my future mattered more than his loneliness. I left. I kissed Lily's forehead at the bus stop. She shoved the disposable camera into my backpack and said, "Proof." Ethan stood back, shoulders against the porch post, and only after the bus hissed did I see his hand tighten around the rail until the knuckles whitened. The dorm was cramped, the program was everything, late nights in dark rooms, strangers asking about my ring. I kept it on a chain because legality scared me, Lily's letters arriving in crayon and misspelled thunder, Dad burned soup. He sings off-key when you're not. Ethan sent envelopes with no return address, each containing a photo he'd secretly taken of me in the studio, my profile at golden hour, my fingers brushing Lily's hair. On the back, one line, finish what you started. Mid-semester I got the call. Lily had fallen from the new loft bed her father built for room when I left. Concussion, observation, scared tears. A campus friend drove me 3 hours through rain because the buses stopped running. The ER smelled like antiseptic and wet coats. Ethan sat with his forehead to Lily's cot, her helmet of bandages dwarfing her face. She saw me first and shouted, "You came." Ethan lifted his head, eyes rimmed red. When the nurse stepped out he whispered, "I didn't call you to guilt you." I sat on the too small chair and realized the heart rate monitor was echoing my own pulse. I'd missed the cadence of this house. That night, at his kitchen table while Lily slept with a cool cloth, we finally talked like two adults, not contracts. "I didn't marry you for a mother," he said, hands rough. Maribel made me promise Lily wouldn't grow up with a ghost house. I thought I needed a name on a form. What I needed was someone who didn't flinch when Lily drew a new family without mom in the picture. You looked at her drawings and saw a person, not a chore. And every part of me wanted to be fair because when you're 40 and life has taken the woman you loved, you know how easy it is to steal someone's 20s to cure your hurt. I couldn't. He surprised me again. From the cupboard he lifted a folded paper. It was our marriage license with a sticky note, filed but never binding until you want it. "Legal's been handled, debts forgiven," he said. "I called your dad months ago. He's working mornings in my shop now, his back's better. You owe nothing. When you're done with school, if you want, come back because Lily asked me last week if you would always be the lady who takes pictures of the corner of rooms, and that's how she thinks of love, someone who notices." He stood, walked out to the garage, left me with the shock that a man forced to be a husband had spent a year giving me the one thing no one had, choice. I finished the semester and kept my ring on the chain not because I was bound, but because it reminded me of the line between gratitude and love. I photographed grocery aisles at midnight, old men in barbershops, girls with braids who looked like Lily might at 7. And each print bricked a path forward. I could stay near campus, sign a lease, live the script I'd written at 18. Or I could return to the place where I first heard a man say, "You can keep the key," and know he meant it. I chose late spring. Graduation hung on a string in my dorm. The bus dropped me at the corner where rain had once stuck my hair to my cheeks. I walked up to the house with the cedar smell. The studio light was on. Ethan was inside, gluing a bookcase, Lily at his elbow with safety goggles too big. She spotted me through the glass and shrieked, flinging the door. "You're late for the gallery," she yelled. Inside, the studio walls were covered. Not with his chairs or Maribel's old canvases, but with my work, printed on matte paper, arranged in a crooked, tender line. Class projects, Lily's disposable camera shots, one image Ethan had taken of me laughing in the kitchen when I didn't know anyone watched. At the center he'd made a tiny placard, "Welcome home, if you want." Ethan stood with his hands dusted. "I couldn't give you youth back," he said, his voice cracking at 42, "so I tried to make a room where you wouldn't lose yourself." He was still careful, still older, still a father first. He surprised me most by not reaching to kiss, by asking instead, "Where do you want the new shelf?" In that question was everything: permission, partnership, patience. I cried then, hard, ugly, into the shoulder of a flannel that smelled of wood glue, because the boy who should have loved me at 20 would never have known to sand the edges of my ambitions smooth. I didn't stay because of a debt or a signed paper. I stayed because when Lily tugged my hand and whispered, "Can you teach me how to use the big camera so I can keep mom and you both?" I understood family isn't always forged in the fire of passion, sometimes it's carpentered slowly, with room left for light through the cracks. The lesson punches clear now: love that lasts doesn't hurry to brand you, it hands you keys, clears space, urges you out the door so you know coming back is yours, not the world's. Age mattered less than the fact that when I was 20 and scared, a 40-year-old single dad surprised me by treating me like a whole person, not a solution. If any part of your story feels like a contract you didn't write, remember you can ask for the clause that says you keep your keys. If this story reached the part of you that's waiting for a different kind of surprise, drop a like so I know you felt it, subscribe so you're here when I tell the next one, and comment below, have you ever found family where you least expected it? Thank you for staying till the very last line, that's where the truth always settles.